Welcome to the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about wealth generation, finances, and real estate investing. I'm your host, Nathaniel Giovanniopoulos, and today on the show we have Darion Blake. He's a wholesaler that's been doing the wholesaling business for about 9 years now. He also runs an educational YouTube channel where he teaches about the process to help people learn how to get started. How are you doing today, Darion?
Oh, splendid, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to have you on the show. So basically what we're looking to find out here today is how exactly did you get started? And can you explain exactly what it is that happens when someone is engaged in wholesaling?
Yeah, man. So it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it as short as I can. So I got into it right after, really not even after the military. I was still in the army when I came across wholesaling, but I had a really good conversation with at the time he was a mentor of mine for the direction that I was going within, I guess, my military service. But we sat down one day, had a real serious conversation. He had asked what my goals were and what my plans were. And it kind of took me by surprise. I didn't have a really good answer for it. I had never thought about it before. I never looked that far ahead. All I knew is what I was doing was what I wanted to be doing for the rest of my life. So I was in a long range surveillance unit, and that was like my bread and butter. And I wanted to do like special forces. So that was kind of like far seeing kind of goals in the military. Well, it's that question just kind of stuck with me, man. And so I started pondering like what do I really want to do with my life? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to be? What are the things that I want to achieve outside of the military? And I couldn't think of anything, man, like at all. I didn't go to college. I graduated high school, went straight to the military. That was about it. And so I picked up. Actually, it's funny, man. I picked up a course by Ty Lopez called the 67 Steps. And essentially, it's like a mentorship where he kind of guides you with, like, I guess, advice. So it's nothing like super crazy. But from there, man, it really just led me to expanding within, I guess, like self development. And so I started reading, which is ironic because I hated reading, like, hated reading. And now I got a book. I wrote a book. It's crazy. So full circle on that, man. But no, I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki because I wanted to become more financially literate. And in the book, he talks about how him and his wife Kim go on a vacation to Hawaii, and while he's over in Hawaii, he does a real estate deal and ends up assigning a contract and made like 16 grand in less than 24 hours. So I was like, how the hell do you do that? How do you get into real estate with like no capital, with like no credit? How do you do it? So that led me to just a rabbit hole on Google of how to get into real estate with no money. Came across the term wholesaling. From there, man, I dove into it like crazy. I ended up picking up a course by Cody Sperber, and about 2 weeks of having the course, I started putting together bandit signs. This is how I got my first deal. So this is 2 weeks. Put together some bandit signs, and it wasn't anything fancy. It was just cardboard boxes. I cut them up, and I wrote "I buy houses cash" on a permanent marker. Because it looks super legit. Um, and so I took it, man, and I posted it on like stop signs all over town. And I ended up setting up a Google Voice number and associated that onto my bandit signs. And so all the calls coming in, I knew that they were from these bandit signs. And that's how I ended up landing my first deal, man. It was pretty wild. That was a really great learning experience, in a very positive way. I learned quite a bit of different lessons. Firstly, I learned it's very difficult to move a property when you are in a very rural area because your access to buyers is very limited, so your pool is a
Mhm.
lot smaller. Secondly, I learned that having the biggest house on the block is not always the best case scenario. So I learned that one as well. But I would say the most important lesson that I really learned from it was I was there to provide an actual service and help a family like genuinely help a family sell their property, and it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the assignment that I was making. It wasn't about any of that. It was just about servitude. So those are the three big lessons I learned, but that last one is the one that really just kind of stuck, and I've been running with it ever since.
Yeah, I really
So
like
that's one
that.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, man, that's it's one of my core values is servitude.
Very cool. So it's interesting how many people I talk to really get started because of Robert Kiyosaki and his book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I also had to chuckle that you hated reading because one of my favorite quotes that I've heard recently has been bouncing around in my head is that the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And so the fact that you finally got out of your comfort zone and started doing the reading for your personal development kind of kicked everything off. And I really like that lesson there. And then I had to laugh also about the bandit signs because I've done door-to-door sales, and I actually served a mission for my church where I went and I knocked doors trying to sell Jesus, right? And there's a lot of rejection involved with that, but sometimes you feel like people look at you as only like one step above somebody who's panhandling on the street. And it's kind of the similarities between the two of the things, like they're still going out and they're taking action at least, and I don't know, it's cool. I like how everything kind of evolved. I also wanted to say thank you for your service. It's really cool.
Oh, I appreciate it, bro. That's awesome. Thank you.
So bandit signs, huh? Are you still doing bandit signs, or are you progressed onto different marketing channels since then?
I would say for the most part, I've progressed onto different marketing channels, but Bandit Signs is definitely always one that's still really good. It's a really good. If you're just starting off, I always recommend it because it's fairly inexpensive.
Okay.
The only thing that you really need to be, I guess, aware of is when you're running Bandit Signs is you want to ensure that you're not spinning your wheels in the wrong market. So you want to figure out and discover, like, if in your area, what are the hottest zip codes? When you break down the hottest zip codes, you want to look at the, I guess, recently sold properties that went for cash and try to hone in on subdivisions. So if one subdivision has more of a grouping of closed transactions than another, it would make more sense to put your bandit signs in a subdivision that has a lot more closed transactions. So you're essentially doing what's called geofencing. That is a really great way to, I guess, more target sellers that are more likely to end up selling your property. And it's also helping you because you're going to have a more likelihood of actually being able to move that property when it comes to the dispo side.
Mm-hmm.
So when you create this geofence, you can do this with bandit signs. You can do it with driving for dollars. You can do it door knocking. You can even set it up for inbound leads. Well, I mean, these are inbound leads kind of, but you can set it up for like Facebook marketing, PPC, even pay per lead. So if you're doing pay per lead and you're looking for specific zip codes, well, only pay for the leads that are in that specific zip code. So bandit signs is definitely a really good, I guess, marketing strategy as long as you're doing it smart.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of goes along with a lot of things, though, because fuzzy targets don't get hit, right? If you're aiming at everything, well, then you're going to hit everything, but it might not be the thing you were aiming at. I mean,
Yeah.
So I know I like that. You called it geofencing?
Yeah, it's called geofencing. So
Geofencing.
yeah, man, I'm a really big believer in quality over quantity.
Okay.
So if I can really narrow down my marketing channels, my marketing focus to like the hottest zip codes in my market, and then take it a step further by focusing like on specific subdivisions, then I'd much rather do that than pull a list of like the entire DFW area and try to target everybody all at once. So it's kind of like setting up a target that's 75 yards away and shooting it with a shotgun versus shooting it with a rifle.
Gotcha.
So
I like that analogy. All right. So I guess if you're doing bandit signs and marketing in this fashion, I'm going to assume that the properties you're going after aren't actually listed on the MLS. You're looking for off-market properties. Is that correct?
yeah, ideally. So you can still do on market properties, but when it comes to wholesaling, it's a little bit tricky. So, for example, if the property is listed at, like I'm looking at a few right now, if this property is listed at 264,500, it doesn't make sense for me to come in and get it under contract. And let's say the numbers actually work, and ARV is like, I don't know, the 400s. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to come in and get the property under contract at 260 and try to market it out at 265 when it's listed for pretty much 265. So when you're doing on-market properties, you got to be cognizant of that and be completely aware that if you're going to get a property under contract, you have to ensure that you're getting it significantly under the asking price or the list price, because one, you still got to make an assignment on it, but two, you have to be able to deliver it to buyers showing that you've got it down at a discount. So if you're able to save them negotiations of like 30 grand, that's a big value add. But if you're coming with an on-market property and you're presenting it and it's only like 5K off of asking, there's not a whole lot of value add there. So when you're doing stuff like this, especially on market, you got to be cognizant of that. Off market is always preferred, especially with this method, because I mean, you dictate what you push that price out at. As long as the numbers make sense, that's all that matters.
Yeah, okay. And for people who don't understand exactly why that's the case, is because a lot of time the wholesaler is going to be marketing these properties to a specific kind of buyer. A lot of time it's going to be either fix and flippers or people who wish to buy and hold a property to turn it to a rental. And a lot of times there's going to be rehab costs involved, as well as holding costs where they have to pay the monthly mortgage payment until they're ready to start making money on it. And so we have to take all those kinds of things into consideration. And that's why doing it just $5,000 under, say, the market price isn't going to fly, because then the person that's looking to buy it from you isn't actually going to make any money. Did I get the gist of that?
For the most part, I mean, there's a lot to it. Like you can have, like for example, this property here, I have no idea what the ARV is, but let's say it's like 450. 264.5 for a $450,000 house with like, I don't know, 45K in repairs isn't a bad deal, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And there's not a whole lot of value add if you're presenting the property to investors where you're pretty close at the same list price as the agent. Because it's like, what's the difference between, I guess, working with you in comparison going direct to the agent? So
Gotcha.
that way I don't have to worry about like, this fee or anything like that. But if you have the property and you're able to present it to a cash buyer where it's 20, 30K under the list price, now you're adding value. So you're saving that buyer time and you're saving them. I mean, really, you're just saving them time. They don't have to go and worry about like the negotiations with the seller. They don't have to try to get it, the price down because you've already got it. So that would be a value add.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense to me. Why would they want to work with you versus just a real estate agent that's listing the property on the MLS if you haven't made anything that's made your offer distinctive from what they're doing? So,
Exactly.
Okay. So I guess that leads into my next question, which is what do you do to find your buyers when you go to do the dispo side? Because let's say I'm a new wholesaler. I've gone through all the steps to put out bandit sides, do my marketing with the geofencing. I finally secure a property under contract at a discount. But now what? Where do I go to find the buyer that I need to be actually able to make that money with the assignment fee?
I would say the first free source you could utilize and really take to your advantage is Facebook. So in your
Okay.
market, in your area, if you join every single real estate investment group that's there, start networking, build out your network, post your deal, talk about or make a post about looking for buyers. You can even take it a step further and get with a wholesaler that's, I guess, more advanced like myself, and we can help you dispo that deal to bring a buyer to the table. So when you're doing a joint venture like that, it's a lot more time consuming. And if you're partnering up with somebody who's been well established in the market, typically they're going to have really good buyers, like they're, I guess, VIP buyers. These are the buyers that they know for sure are going to be able to close on a deal. They've done tons of work with them. They're legit and they trust them. So if you could find somebody like myself in your area or your market, don't be afraid to do a joint venture, because 50% of something is 100% better than nothing.
Yep.
There's no worst case scenario is if you're not able to find a buyer, now you terminate the contract and you just lose everything. So
Yep.
instead of risking that and putting more stress on you, connect with somebody like me. That'll allow you to focus more on the acquisitions while they focus on the disposition. So you can go out and tentatively try to get more deals while they work this property for you. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But if you're looking to do it on your own, Facebook is a really great source. It's a really great tool. Just make posts, network as much as you can. And then the second best thing that I would recommend doing is going to listsource.com. Go to listsource.com, figure out, actually, I wouldn't say figure out, I'll give you a cheat code. There is a guy named Max Maxwell. He teaches on this very well. He's got a video on YouTube. If you type in listsource.com Max Maxwell, it'll pop right up. He teaches you and he will show you how to go in, use ListSource, and get partial lists that show you the zip codes to really, one, focus on, but two, it also gives you the ability to buy a list that shows you the buyers who bought those properties in the last 12 months. It'll show you the buyer's owner name, so if it's their personal name, or even if it is an entity or an LLC or a company, it'll show that as well. So from there, once you have this Excel sheet of the buyers in these zip codes, you can skip trace those buyers using a source like truepeoplesearch.com because it's free.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big believer in free. I like free, you know. So if you can do it for free, man, it's, you know, the more power to you. But go to truepeoplesearch.com, put in that entity, or even go to Google and do an entity search, and that'll show you who it's registered under, and then skip trace that person. So, and you can skip trace that person by using truepeoplesearch.com. So when you do that, you're able to build up your own buyers list if that's the route that you want to take. But there's a big difference between acquisitions and dispositions. Huge difference. They both take different amount of work, and they both take a different amount of work. And there's different approaches to take when you're finding a property or doing lead generation in comparison to finding buyers. Another way, this is kind of going, it's good, it's strong, it's a really strong method, but you just have to have access to the MLS. So
Okay.
if you have MLS access, you can really specify your search criteria. So when you're searching for your area, if you go into the financing and you select cash only, it's going to show you all the cash deals that were done. Go to closed. All you want to look at is closed properties for the last 12 months. And once you do that, now you can look at who was that buyer's agent. Reach out to that buyer's agent, connect with them, network with them, and see if their client is open to finding any more properties. And when you do this, when you're connecting with these agents, you can actually create a lot of leverage. So it's like, hey, you know, if we get this deal done, yes, you can represent us as the buyer's agent, but we can also take this a step further. I don't know if you're familiar with going into a joint venture, but this is what that looks like, and explain the joint venture process for them. This is a little bit more advanced,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a really great way to do or to create leverage. I do it all the time, and it works amazingly.
Okay. And so when you refer to leverage, it's basically just like motivating the agent to work with you, right? To where they'll go out and help you look for properties. Is that the kind of one I'm getting?
Yep,
Okay.
100%.
And then they get compensation by being able to joint venture with you in these deals that they bring to the table.
Right. So
Okay.
they kind of double dip. Actually, they double dip, but they have the ability to do like a triple dip. So they double dip, one, by representing us as the buyer's agent, two, by going into a joint venture with us, and three, if the buyer or if us, when we buy the property, they can list the property for us. So it's a triple dip.
Okay.
So they're
So they
getting it.
end up being the role for the seller's listing agent, the buyer's listing agent, and part of the joint venture.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a really great way to help them make money and put food on their table. And when you do that, you're not creating what's called like a transactional relationship. You're actually creating a real genuine relationship because
Mhm.
you're able to provide so much value to them and vice versa. And so anytime they have a property, who do you think they're going to go to? They're
Yeah.
probably going to go to
No,
you.
it makes sense because everyone's trying to feed their family, right? So
Yeah, exactly. So they know that if you do this, they know that you'll take care of them. And so in turn, they'll take care of you by bringing you deals. So you're essentially creating free bird dogs. It's a really great method. It's a really great tool. So that's how I create leverage when working with agents.
okay, I like that. Very cool. Well, one of the other things you mentioned about your lessons is that the service portion of things. Have you had what kind of experiences have you had where you've gone out and you've helped these people sell their property, and that has been beneficial to them and it's impacted your life?
Ooh, man, I've closed over hundreds of transactions.
Put you on the spot
There's
here.
You did. It's okay though. There's two that I can think of that really kind of pop out to me. One was a seller in Sherman, Texas. She had a very, I would say, unique situation. She did have a unique situation, but it was just um, very sensitive situation. So basically, she had this house. It was piss poor condition, completely distressed. She didn't have to move by any means. She really
Mhm.
didn't. But some stuff went down in the property. And so it just created a lot of negative emotions for her.
Gotcha.
And it was just tough for her. It was tough for her family. And so they had that urgency to just like drop it, leave it alone, and move on. So they can move on with their lives. So that was probably I would say, one of the most sentimental transactions I've done direct to seller because it just meant so much to her. And so what we ended up doing, and it's kind of funny because it's not funny, but this is the property where I also got the biggest reduction on. So initially, when we started talking, she wanted 250,000 for the property, but the
Mhm.
ARV for the house was only 225. So
Yep.
when I met her in person, we did our in-person appointment. I really kind of got to know her, her family, and kind of really understood what was going on in her world? Like, what was the real reason behind them letting go of the property? And so that's when they broke down everything. And from there, man, we talked about the property for maybe 5 minutes, 5, 10 minutes. But from there, I ended up showing her what was going on in her market. So I broke everything down like, hey, this is what's going on in your market. Here's an ARV comp that's literally right down the street and it's sold for 225. Basically, there's no way I could justify 250 for this. And, you know, it's going to need at least 65,000 repairs. When you agree? And she's like, well, yeah. It's like, yeah. So I broke down the numbers for her. We ended up settling for pretty much $90,000. So from 250 to 90 grand is where we settled
That's a pretty good
at.
spread there, even if it was not profitable at the price you wanted, you know? So that's interesting.
Yeah, man. But we did that. We ended up getting her out of the house. We paid for a hotel for her and her family for about a month. Um, just closed as fast as we could. We had to wait for some title issues to kind of clear up because her ex-husband was incarcerated, so that kind of made things a little bit challenging as far as paperwork goes, and getting everything really just deeded over to her. So we helped her with that process. Actually, took a trip down to the prison to kind of expedite it as well. So we really went above and beyond, man. But we didn't just stop there. We also helped with all their moving expenses as well. So we hired a moving company, hired people to come in and pack stuff up and load everything for them, and then took it a step further. It's all about service. It's all about providing service, right? Providing value. Took it a step further. Negotiate. We found the next property for them to go into, and negotiated that deal for them, and got them into it. So that was probably the most rewarding um, and most sentimental one because she broke down, man. She broke
Yeah.
down and just showed so much gratitude, and it was a really really awesome experience, man. So yeah, that was probably like the I guess the biggest one that stood out.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, like, I always kind of considered if there's the possibility of going out and helping a family find a new place to live if you're going to buy the house from them. It's interesting that you were able to do that. I like the story. So you mentioned there were two that were impactful. Is that the only one that you wanted to talk about today, or what was the other one?
The other one was it wasn't as strong, but it's still a really good one, man. So it's a family. Basically, it was two brothers and a sister. They had a property here in Dallas, and their mother had just passed away. So they inherited the property, and one of the brothers was blind. So at the moment, initially, it was the sister that ended up coming back and taking care of the brother, moving into the property. And then the other brother ended up coming back and moving into the property to help with their brother. So they dealt with that for a good while, man. And the property was just that was like really bad. Like, I mean, it's sinking like in the ground. Like
Like
it,
foundational issues?
yeah, it was awful.
Okay.
And very similar to the Sherman seller, like they just wanted to get out, man. They wanted to get out, they wanted to move on. Their mom's room was untouched, so all of her belongings, all of her clothes, the way she last made her bed, like all of that was still there. They had not gone into the room. And very similar here as well. So we helped with the moving process, helped with finding another place, and we actually ended up connecting them with another investor to essentially do a seller finance deal. So we got that squared away, negotiated the terms for them as well to make sure they weren't getting taken advantage of and they weren't paying an arm and a leg in interest over like a 30-year amortization schedule. So we
Gotcha.
made sure that they were taken care of. Um, and they were they were a sweet family, man. We closed that. Actually, we closed that one super quick. That was maybe a week and a half closing.
It's
So that
pretty
one
quick.
went by
Yeah.
really quick. Um, and the tricky part here is really making the numbers work on the deal. So one of the brothers had a child support lien on the property, and they needed 100 grand to walk away. Like they needed $100,000 net in order for them
Okay.
to walk away
They
from
need to
this.
walk away with that much, right? Okay.
Yeah. So their total like the total that they needed, including um, actually no, we covered all the closing costs. Well, yeah, including the closing costs, we need to make sure they ended up getting 127,000 and some change to net the $100,000 like flat. And it's not. This is not the biggest. This is the smallest deal I've ever done. The assignment was only like $700.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the smallest deal I've ever done. But again, it's like just being there, being able to provide that service, right? So don't get me wrong, man. Like making money in this industry is great and all, and you can make a ton of it. Like my average assignment is 37 grand, so
Hmm.
it's not bad. But I do this to provide as much value as I can. And if somebody's in like a really tough spot, like they were, it doesn't make sense for me to tell them no. Like, hey, I'm not going to do that because I need to make this amount of money at minimum.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like no, there's everything comes full circle, and there's always going to be more out there. So it's like if I can help you and still make a couple $100, like I'm totally happy with it. And it didn't take no time at all. It took me maybe less than in total time put into it, maybe less than 24 hours. So really wasn't a bad
Okay,
deal at
yeah.
all.
Well, I like that you say that it's not always about the money because that's kind of one of my core values. I decided to get into real estate and the lending side of things, I'd say 8 or 9 months ago. And while the money is always important because you need to support people in your life, it wasn't a primary focus for me because I figured that real estate was a good avenue for me to work through a lot of my personal problems and to be able to develop as a person. And I really like that it kind of hits a chord in my heart that you're being able to help other people that are in a hard place, because my family went through that as I grew up. And so I'd like to be able to be in a position that I could do what I wish people had been able to do for us when I was a child. And so, yeah, it's money is always the icing on the cake, but I really think it's all about purpose and finding a way to, uh, hard to articulate this, make an impact in the world. I really
Yeah,
think it boils down to
100%.
that. So, well, cool. I really appreciate you having a conversation with me today. I guess there's a couple of things that we have been having go across the screen down at the bottom. These are the social media handles and websites that are associated with what Darion's doing. Could you explain a little bit about dbrealty.learnworlds.com, about what you're doing there?
Yeah, man. So, this is really exciting. This one's super exciting. I'm like beyond thrilled to do this. So it started off real small, but I teach classes every Tuesdays and Thursdays, every single week, 6 p.m., and it's free for anybody to join. And it isn't like some surface level type stuff. It's very detailed, very deep dives into education when it comes to wholesaling 101 and the fundamentals, and also business development as well. And then for Thursdays, you've got deal analysis and underwriting. So this is where people kind of bring properties that they're struggling with and need a second pair of eyes on, or they just need help underwriting a deal. And so that's what we do is we dive into the underwriting process. I explain in detail what I look for, why I look for these things, and what I avoid. And so from there, we're able to kind of figure out what the rehab is going to be for the property to determine really what kind of offer needs to be made. So those are the two classes that start off Tuesdays, Thursdays, 6 p.m. And from there, I had a lot of feedback from a lot of the, I guess, attendees. And it kind of led to this idea of building a community and a course. So the last thing, I am a big believer in being a go-giver. That is like my biggest core value is being a go-giver, because there are irrefutable laws that come with that. So it's just inevitable. These things just will always take place, and they always happen. And to emphasize more on that, you can read a book called Go Giver. It's funny. It's called The Go Giver. There's a free audio book on YouTube. It's amazing. But this course and this community is going to be provided for free. And the course itself is not like all these other gurus out there. It's very in-depth. It is very detailed. I'm even providing all of my contracts. So my purchase and sell agreements, my joint venture agreements, my addendums, my amendments, everything. I'm giving all of my stuff to everybody that's a part of the community. So everybody has access to it. I even break down how to use my purchase and sell agreement and how to use my joint ventures agreement as well. And I even have like a PDF breakdown of it where it explains like per paragraph what each section does. So I got that going. The community is basically the central hub for anything. So whether you're like completely new, have no idea what you're doing, and this is the route that you want to go, or even if you're experienced but you're still struggling to get your system set up, like your SOPs, your KPIs, your overall structure of your business, your accountability organization chart, your rocks, like your scorecard, whatever it is, this is like the place to be. This is the place to come to, because all of your answers would be answered, or all of your questions would be answered. So if you have a question, you go into the community, you post it, we'll get to it, we'll answer it as best as we can. And whatever you need help with, like that's our goal. Our goal is to really just help individuals structure this thing out to where they're able to actively start doing more deals and actually create this into a business and not just a hobby. Because if you treat it as a hobby, it will always stay a hobby. But if you really want this to be a business, that's what we're doing. We're teaching the 4 key pillars of how to make this happen. And then to take it a step further, I think this is really cool. To take it a step further, I'm actually working on building a mobile app for iOS devices. So you will have an app on your phone that'll give you the community and also give you the course. The course is very interactive. There's videos, there's assessments, there are introductions, even one-on-ones as well, even one-on-one sessions. So I'm super stoked for it. It's still in the process of being worked out, and all the kinks are being, fine-tuned. But yeah, that's what dbrealty.learnworlds.com is for. And again, it's completely free.
It sounds like an amazing resource. So I'll have to look into that myself. And then, I imagine that a lot of people will be able to find a good use out of that, because I think the biggest stumbling block to getting started in real estate is that there's so much information involved, and people just don't really know where to start. So there's your answer, folks. Start with the DB Realty learnworld.com. Go check that out and become part of the community with Blake there. Or I called you by your last name. Darion. Darion there. But anyway, all right, cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave with our viewers before we sign off for the day?
I'm solid, brother. I think we covered quite a bit of traction,
I'm glad to hear it. So I really appreciate you getting on here and giving me a chat here today, and we'll look forward to working with you here in the future. So remember, this has been the Pot of Gold podcast, and I'm obviously tired today. I just totally lost what I was saying. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And this has been our interview today with Darion Blake. If you want to connect with him, follow the Instagram or Facebook or website links below. And I'll also include them in the YouTube description. So thanks for tuning in today, and you all have a good day.
Sweet.